glad you're here. My name is Crispina French, and I'm your host of the Rags to Riches podcast. I'm an OG textile alchemist, worked my way through art school making ragamuffins from thrift store sweaters way back in the 1980s. That college side hustle grew into a full-fledged business, and here I am to show you that you can do that too. Together, we'll navigate hurdles, challenges, and accomplishments while crafting your profitable textile upcycling business to serve you and the planet. My guests and I will cover topics including material sourcing, business savvy, product development, sales and marketing, and self-care. Overcoming struggles, celebrating wins, and reaping rewards of running your very own textile upcycling business is what we are all about. Are you ready to be inspired, energized, and supported? This is the Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast. Today's episode of Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast is brought to you by Sideshow Clothing on Etsy and in person in Craryville, New York. Are you a burgeoning fashion icon who delights in your individual style? Maybe you have a penchant for really good clothing, a love of creative presentation, and respect for our life-giving planet. Or, if you are like me, you like to wear well-made clothing to handle your daily grind and stand up to the test of time. Sideshow Clothing has what you need. Vintage workwear, boots galore, jackets, dresses, ethnic and Western wear, the works. Mary curates this creamy collection of inventory, some dating back over 100 years, but mostly fashions from the 1970s through the 1990s. If you want to honor the quality of well-made clothing and stand out in the crowd, check out sideshowclothing.com, where you will find an anecdote to fast fashion and so much more. Hi there. We are in for such a treat today, you guys. We have two lovely young people with me today on the Rags to Riches podcast. We have Caylin and Jared, and they have this really cool company that's called Yvonne and Mitchel.
Yes.
And I read a bunch about you guys, but I'm not going to try to remember what I read and say it the wrong way. So before we dive into the amazing line that you've created, I'd like to just get a little bit of backstory. And it's kind of funny. Like when I'm listening to a podcast, sometimes it's interesting when there's more than one guest. So you'll be able to distinguish voices pretty easily. But Caylin, why don't you share a little bit about how you got to where you are? And then Jared, if you wouldn't mind doing the same, that'd be awesome. Let's hear it, guys.
First off, thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here to talk with you. So I am the Yvonne half of Yvonne and Mitchel. Yvonne and Mitchel is our middle names. I'm Caylin Yvonne. He's Jared Mitchel.
Awesome.
And we have been together and known each other for about 7 years now. And about a year into when we met, we decided to start a business together. And that was just like reselling vintage. And that happened when we were in college. Thrifting and shopping secondhand was something we had done individually our entire lives. And when we came together, that was like the first thing that we instantly bonded on. And it quickly became the thing that we just loved to do the most.
Where did you guys go to school?
We went to the University of Missouri, Mizzou, which is based in Columbia, Missouri.
Oh, cool.
Yes. And I was there pursuing journalism. I got a degree in the journalism school in strategic communications, which is like, digital marketing, advertising. And then Jared was actually getting a degree in health sciences.
Yeah, in health sciences. So as Caylin said, we were just reselling vintage when we first met. We did that for 2 or 3 years. And I actually learned how to sew in high school. My mother taught me. I was in a business organization called DECA, and I did an entrepreneurial project. And I decided to base this project around upcycling. And I was on the basketball team at this time. And all my teammates and I had to wear ties for our games. And we just couldn't really find interesting ties. And I decided to tie this project into what I had going on with basketball and with the skills I was learning behind the sewing machine from my mother. So I started making straight and bow ties out of thrifted materials.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. And
you go ahead. we always say every time we're talking to somebody, Kaylin's the talker. I'm just here. I sew the thing. She does everything else. She's the battery to this whole thing.
But you know what? I have to say, Jared, like I remember when I first started my business back in the day, I always wished that I had a business partner just to start with. Like my best friends for many years were sisters and they had a business together. And I met them doing wholesale shows. So, I'm sure that Caylin is like the person who's like, you probably write all the copy and like figure out like how we're going to present ourselves. But, and I love that the way that you present your company is just beautiful. So congratulations on that. But I also want to hear from you, Jared.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to pick your brain a little bit. So I want to know about these basketball playing, tie wearing people. They were all supportive of what you were up to. They didn't think you were a freak or anything like that.
No. I've always been heavily into all of my art classes, from elementary school all the way until high school. But I was also a big sports player. I thought I was going to play basketball in college. That was kind of my goal. Both of my brothers played college sports. That was kind of my goal. But I knew my whole life that I wanted to make a living off of my creativity. I've always felt like my creativity is like why I'm here, and
sacred gifts.
Artistry is my passion.
Yep.
This project, it all just kind of came together, and in the right way. And I was just selling straightened bow ties at lunch to my buddies, to teachers even. And I called this business Recycled. So like recycled, but I put tie in the middle. And I don't know, the project was okay. It did decent, but once I presented it to the judges of this competition, they said that I didn't follow any of the rules correctly. But my teacher was so heavily invested in my project and just loved it so much. She was there every single detail. And somehow when I went to present it, they said, "Hey, you did not follow any of the rules."
Well, you're my kind of person, because honestly, who wants to follow rules? All right, you guys go follow those rules. I'll be over here making ties. Thank you.
Yeah. And it was all just an entrepreneurial project. It was make a business plan, and then present it.
And you made a business and you're selling ties at lunchtime, and those guys are all probably still trying to figure out how to make a business.
And through that whole process, my mother was teaching me how to sew. She's a very crafty person. She was also a big reason why I've always been into thrifting and buying secondhand. That was one of our hobbies growing up, was taking my brothers and I to these thrift stores. We had a small thrift store right outside of my school, and I would actually be walking home from school and I would trade toys back and forth. So thrifting has always been a big part of my life. And once I met Caylin, that was our favorite thing to do, is go thrifting every weekend. Those were our dates.
Yeah, that's awesome. How fun. And then you guys started this business. So when did you get started together? When did Yvonne and Mitchel get launched?
I believe it was 2017.
2017
or 2018. We were sophomores in college. And like I said earlier, we just started reselling our thrift finds for super cheap to our friends, just as an extra way to make some money for groceries or whatever. And we didn't really have a long-term goal of turning it into a business. It was just a cool way to make money, a fun way to do it, and something we really enjoyed. And as we were sourcing at the thrift store for stuff to sell, Jared would find different things that were maybe considered less desirable, like with holes or stains, stuff that was more likely to be overlooked. And he would take those projects and sort of keep them to himself and practice sewing on them. And he was doing that for the first 3 years that we were just selling vintage, until eventually I was like, hey, these are really amazing. Not only are they unique and they're one of ones, but we could potentially have an even greater impact on the environment by trying to save these clothes in the thrift store that might, just be less likely to be worn and bought. So that was in 2019, 2020, that we decided to pivot from reselling vintage to being a solely upcycled clothing business selling Jared's designs.
Yeah, kind of right at the height of COVID, actually, and lockdown. At that time, I was spending a lot of time behind the sewing machine. And yeah, like she said, these were just kind of projects for me. I was just kind of having fun. And she saw something in them, and we decided to start posting them, and people really latched on to it. And we got to do some really cool projects early on. And that's kind of kept the momentum for us. And now we're here on this podcast.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. It's really a lovely story of just like, sometimes when people come, well, let me back up a minute. I also started my business when I was a sophomore in college. So kudos to you. And like, yes, there's something for that, connection. But it's also really interesting how a lot of people, like, I didn't know I was starting a business, kind of like you didn't really know either. And like, it took me actually really a couple of years to be like, oh my gosh, like, I think I have a business. I mean, I knew I had a business, but I didn't know that that's really what I was going to do, like follow,
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes it's almost like better that way because you don't really have an expectation and you don't really have a plan that you're either, hitting your goals or not hitting your goals. It's just like, and that Jared was like doing this like fun thing. Like, this is fun. I'm over here creating this stuff. And then for you to be like, wait, honey, like, that's awesome. What you're doing is so cool. And then, so it's not like you were trying to create a product. You were just playing and like letting your creative mind just have the time that it needed to that you needed to just kind of feel whole. I'm sure, like, as a person, I don't know that if you're a creative person and you don't have a creative outlet, it's kind of like, you need it. Right. So that's a really cool story. So then fast forward, first of all, I just have to say, like, anybody who's listening really needs to go check out Yvonne and Mitchel. Is it yvonneandmitchel.com?
Yes.
Because it's just like your presentation is really lovely. Like, it's very, your collection is very unusual and body conscious and super sexy and fun. And your presentation matches, but it's also got this like real warmth and like welcome kind of, there's not any pretense. And I just really like that. It's very clear. It's beautiful. You've done such a nice job with that. So
thank you. That's so great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's really nice to have the opportunity to visit someone's website and feel like I really had a clear understanding of, where you guys are coming from. So
that's reassuring.
Yeah, no, it's a really nice job. And so going forward, like, first of all, when you're selling your stuff, are you just selling from your website? Do you have other ways of selling?
As of right now, and actually, I think ever since we started the business, before we even became an upcycled business, we were just selling online e-commerce. At first, it started just as an Instagram page, and we were doing that for the first few years until we were finally able to afford a website, which was in 2020. And that was also when that transition happened to upcycling. And so ever since then, it's just been solely e-commerce and online, which is something we'd like to expand on in the future when the timing is right. But until then, e-commerce has been, I feel like, the most efficient method for us, and also low cost as well.
Yeah, you don't have to travel. I mean, there's other costs, like people who might need to have more than one thing to try on before they're ready to commit or whatever, right? There's that aspect of it that, especially when you're selling clothing, they're always going to have that, when you go in the dressing room, you usually try on more than one thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really cool. And how do people learn about you generally? Do you think they come in from like Instagram, or is that kind of the place that people are able to kind of find you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram was the main driver for the first 4 years or so. And then once we started a TikTok, that really helped take us to the next level. And, just because I was on social media so much myself, I picked up so much about it that I was able to apply, in addition to everything that I was learning in college in terms of how to advertise on it. And so I feel like that all came together and really helped bolster our business. And with TikTok specifically, I remember at the beginning of last year, I decided to do sort of like a test where I posted a video every single day for 30 days just to see what it would do. Because that sort of thing takes a lot of time and effort. And I knew I couldn't do that long term, but if I wanted to test myself and see if we did it for 30 days, how much it would help our business. And I remember in that 30 days, it only took maybe a week or so for it to really start paying off. And at the end of that 30 days, we had grown like 50,000 followers on TikTok, and we had made so many sales, and that transferred over onto our Instagram and to people subscribing on our website. And it really sort of just like bled into all these different areas of our business. And so I would say Instagram and then newly TikTok have been the most helpful.
That's so cool. So and that the kind of consistency of having that daily presentation where people like does whatever the algorithm's doing. I don't know, but this is a video. Here you go. Here's another one. And I think that it really, I can't profess to tell you I know a single thing about algorithms other than they like content, right?
Yes,
like the
exactly.
content is good. And if you have that kind of knowledge as well, so that you're thinking about like, the right kind of words or the right way to feature things or how to photograph them in a way that's appealing to your clientele, like that, those sorts of things, like the combination of those two, I think is like really good. I mean, like,
Definitely.
you proved that, right? Like it worked really nicely for you. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
it was really cool to see it pay off. And yeah, it helped us a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that still happening? And do you feel like you've maxed out your TikTok, or is it still like just going?
I would say I think it helped us build a stable foundation.
Yep.
It's hard to consistently, at least for me, to consistently put that time and effort as well as other things, because it's only us two that run the entire business. And it has been that way ever since we started it. And we're just now starting to reach out and work with other people just because we're experiencing those growing pains, largely from TikTok, of where now we have this increased demand. And with the type of business model we have in terms of like slow fashion and specializing in one-of-one pieces, we really value that and we don't want to stray away from it, but we need more brain power to sort of ideate other ways to expand and sort of, just grow into the new stage of it all. So
That's exciting, you guys. That's so fun, right? Like,
Thank you.
I mean, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, you guys, we are talking to two really amazing creative geniuses here from Yvonne and Mitchel. We have Caylin and Jared with us today, and we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Today's episode of Rags to Riches podcast is brought to you by the Stitcherhood Recycling Society, my online membership community for creative textile upcycling, recycling, and reuse entrepreneurs. Inspiration, shared experience, tutorials, business savvy, and connection to a whole posse of people who understand the passion and intricacies of running an environmentally kind, creative textile upcycling biz. Daily posts, weekly stitch hours, book recommendations, group chats, member profiles, and strong connections is what you can expect when you join Stitcherhood. Head on over to stitcherhood.crispina.eco and sign up for a free 7-day trial to see if my Stitcherhood Recycling Society is a good fit for you and your textile upcycling business. All right, we're back and we are here with Caylin and Jared from Yvonne and Mitchel, based out in Kansas City, Missouri. So you guys went to school together in Missouri. Are you both from Missouri originally? Was that like not too far, or where are you from?
I'm from Missouri. I'm from about an hour outside of Kansas City.
Yes, and I'm from Southern Illinois, right across the river, like 20 minutes from St. Louis. So I kind of always considered myself an honorary Missouri resident because we were in Missouri all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. So then, I mean, it was clear when you started out, like, this is working, right? So that was just like, follow the ball, right? Is that kind of how it unfolded? Is that kind of still how it's unfolding for you? Or do you have like a plan of where you want to be? Do you have like goals and stuff like that? Or are you just kind of seeing where it leads?
I think kind of like what you were talking about before, just following the energy behind doing something that's fun for me and something that really gives me life, and using my artistry is taken us. Well, and Caylin, she sees what I do and she made the business out of it. I'm having fun. I'm sewing these things. I'm making these projects. and she's taken us to the next level.
That's such a cool thing, you guys. Like the symbiosis, right? Like honestly, like before we started recording, I was telling these guys about how there's been many years of my life. When I ran a production company making recycled stuff, right? Like clothing and home goods for 22 years.
Wow.
And for about 21 and a half of those years, I think I just wished I had a business partner. Just if it was, my sister or a partner, or, it's just so nice to have to just, there's you have the same vested interest, you have different skill sets, you've got two heads, you can like bounce ideas off of each other. And that's just awesome. And it's so nice that you have, your skill sets are aligned, but they're separate, and they're not, it's not like you both have the desire to be the creative one, or you both have the desire to be the one who's like creating the presentation, right?
Yeah.
So really cool. That's just beautiful. So the other thing I just want to throw at you guys is like, it's such an important thing to feed your own creative needs, right? Like and I honestly believe that everybody has creative needs. I think a lot of people have no idea that there's something that they do in their everyday that is creative, that maybe they never thought more about it. But there's you were talking about your loving your art classes from in school when you were a kid, Jared, and both my parents were art teachers in public schools. And to this day, I mean, my parents have both been gone for 10 years or more, and there's still people who will send me a card, or I'll run into them at the grocery store or whatever. Your father changed my life.
Oh.
Your mother was my favorite and it's, I think more often the art teachers, right, who have this kind of connection with people who just really thrive in that setting that might struggle in other settings or might not feel the same level of comfort, right? So
yes,
really cool that you were able to tap into that as a kid growing up. And then Caylin, I wonder, like, were you a creative, were you like in an art program in your school? Like how did you come to where you are as far as like your backstory goes?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've always been a creative person as well. My favorite thing to do when I was younger was make fake magazines. And so with Yvonne and Mitchel, I really like the editorial aspect of it and putting together a full story and all the little details of it all.
That so shines through, girl. That's so that's exactly that's what it is. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I always say my memory isn't that great, but the memories I do have are just of me playing dress up in my mom's closet. And it was just the time of my life. I've just always loved clothes. I've always loved playing dress up. I still play dress up at the age of 26. And I'll just be in my room for hours, just hanging out, listening to music and trying on all of my outfits. And now I get to do that with clothes made by one of the people I love most in this world, which is just so special. And I kind of came to this like a year or so ago. I called Jared's designs like a physical fabrication of the soul. Because like you were saying, it's like a touch on the creative aspect. It's a piece of your soul. And to have a physical representation of that, in his case, clothing, is so special. And I think that's what makes his design so special, is because they are so uniquely him and just out of his mind. He doesn't use patterns. He doesn't have a traditional background in fashion or sewing. Like we mentioned earlier, he majored in health sciences. It's just like pure passion, which is so special.
Yeah. I think too, like, as we were talking about how the business kind of just bloomed, like it just, there you go. Here's business.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that is maybe something that we share is that, sometimes I feel like people who have formal education and like how things are supposed to be, like, oh, this is how you do fashion, or this is how you're supposed to sew, or they kind of get into these boxes that they don't know how to get out of. And I feel like I never took sewing classes in my life. My mother taught me how to sew. I think I broke like 10 of my mother's sewing machines as a kid growing up. I'd be like trying to sew through like way too many layers of something thick, and she was so patient with me. And, but it was not, I didn't feel like I had limitation, because it didn't, how do you do it? You do it the way that it works.
Yeah. Make up your own rules.
Yeah. See, I'm telling you, Jared, those rules are
that's still me. I'm still breaking sewing machines. I'm still doing things backwards. I I can't even really watch YouTube tutorials because they're just there's too many directions. I just have to learn, and
by doing.
All of my projects are trial and error. And I tell people all the time, a lot of the special parts of my designs are mistakes that I find ways to overcome. And I'll step back from the project and I'll be like, what in the world just happened? But it was just a result of running into obstacles and finding a way to still make the thing work. And I think that plays into the whole sustainability part of what we're doing, and not giving up on something and discarding it. I might set it aside, but I'll come back in a couple of days and find a way to use it or put it on a different project.
Yeah. There's even been projects where he came back to it a year later and he held on to it for that long. And then that inspiration came and he upcycled his own upcycle into something new, which is really, really cool to see.
Yeah.
That's so cool. The other thing I wanted to just circle back to is when you were talking about how, you find it's fun for you and that's an important piece of what works well for you. The other thing that I think is really kind of what works well for me is that you guys are doing really good. You think about fashion in general, right? Like those people who know how to do fashion, most of the people in the fashion industry are causing catastrophic damage to our planet, right? And you guys are not. You're like the opposite of that. So it makes sense to me that you are making it up as you go along, because that's kind of what we're all doing that in the textile upcycling realm, right? It's just, okay, we have all of this stuff. What are we going to do with it? Let's figure it out. So, that's the kind of overview. And even in your studio with the work that you're making, you're doing the same thing where it's okay, there's this material. I'm not sure how I'm going to resolve this hurdle, but there's a way and I'm going to do it. And then, sure enough, that comes to be. It's kind of a thread that you kind of see, right, as you kind of step back a little bit. So what I'm hearing is that you're in a place where you're ready to maybe consider adding to your ability to produce. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, we're exploring different options, what that would look like. Because again, we don't want to stray too far away, because we, appealing to the masses is a root of the problem. So it's not like we want to, the focus is just to sell as much as we can. But like I said, just growing pains to where we feel that we're ready to take it to the next level, whatever that may look like. We're not really sure.
Yeah. Well, and being open to whatever it might be is a really good way to approach it, because then, you can try whatever opportunities come your way and establish whether or not they're right for you as you kind of learn more about them.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. That's cool. It's funny when I started my business in 1987. So it was a long time ago. And at the time, I never even thought about slow fashion wasn't even a thing. I didn't, well, actually fast fashion wasn't a thing either, but it was always assumed by the people around me, the people who, I asked a lot of questions and got, I went to art school. So business was not my thing. Both my parents were art teachers. It wasn't either. But so, people would say to me, oh, if you ever need help, I'd be like, yeah, I need help. And every single person, every advisor, every, person that offered help, accountants and insurance people and the and economic development people from the state, all assumed that what I wanted to do was grow bigger and faster and sell more. Yeah. And at one point I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how the heck did I get here? I don't want to be creating product that people don't need and trying to convince them that they do. That's just the opposite of everything I believe.
Yes.
And I actually stopped my production company because of that. I was just it was totally insane. It was just not at all. In my mind, it wasn't environmental. I mean, I was enabling people to think differently about product in the world because they would realize that it was recycled. But so the business model, the business size, what you kind of imagine for your future is something that I can hear that you've thought a lot about, and there's pieces of it that are really important to you. And that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, it's, sharing our work with the world and having people have it for themselves is really special. But we also see it as just one aspect of the business. The other aspect is things like this where we're connecting with others and like learning from each other and sharing knowledge. And, you know, we're so early in the business, like there's still so much we have to learn. But if there's any way that we can share what we have learned that can help someone or inspire them to, you know, whether it's start their own upcycling business or just learn more about upcycling and how they can do it solely for themselves, like that's another aspect of the business, is just, you know, learning and sharing it with the world. I think
inspiring, right? Like inspiring. Like I look at your website, you guys, I'm telling you got to go to look at this website. They make corset tops out of bags, out of like pocketbooks. Like I'm not even kidding. Like it's just it's so ingenious, and it's like it's you got to see them. And I think that you know, just to circle back around to what you just said, Caylin, the idea of like, I don't know, fashion. Like you know, when I did wholesale trade shows in the fashion industry.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, I hated those. I just couldn't manage it. It was like so fickle and like, well, what are you going to do for next season? And I'm like, well, next season, there'll be other stuff that I'll upcycle.
Yeah.
You know, you guys are all throwing away all that stuff that you bought last season.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
You know, and it was just, there was so like people were not like welcoming and warm. People did not want to share ideas, or, you know, they would take your designs and, you know, it was just not a transparent industry.
Yeah.
And I think that upcycling is the antithesis of that. It's like we're all working toward the same goal, right? We're all like we're all on this planet together, and we're all wearing clothes and making really cool stuff out of the ones that we're not wearing anymore. And it just seems like I just love it. I love to be in a place where, you know, through my lifetime, I've watched that just come about, and it's just beautiful. It's so nice to hear those words come from your mouth and be like, it's not just me who thinks this. This is so cool. So yeah, it's awesome.
It's so cool to meet others too who are on the same mission as well. And, you know, it's because we are so new to this. Like we're just now meeting other like-minded people like you. And it's really cool to have the chance to connect and learn from you and hear your story, and that you've been on a similar path. It's reassuring too, as well.
Yeah. And it's the same. I feel as like, you know, as inspired by you guys, because it's like, you know, anything that you've been doing for a very long time, you know, when you're maybe a little bit farther along your path, you'll maybe look back and be like, you know, this is cool and it's been interesting, but it's you need a little refresher. You need a little something to perk things up a little bit. And, you know, when that's one of the things I absolutely love about having a podcast and hosting the summit is I get an excuse to like, oh, I wonder who these people are. Let's go talk to them and see what they're up to. So it's a really lovely way to connect, like you said, and to just like have the knowledge that you're sharing with me today. So yeah. Thank you so much, you guys. It's been such a pleasure. I encourage everybody to go over to their website. Again, it's Yvonne and Mitchel, and it's YvonneandMitchel.com. Is the and like a spelled out A-N-D?
Yes, A-N-D.
Okay, cool. .com. If you have time, if you're, you know, don't go on the show notes page if you're hurtling down the highway right now. When you get back to where you can, go on their show notes page and you'll see lots of links to their stuff, their TikTok, Instagram, and websites, and all the imagery that you'll see there is just really super notable. So thanks, you guys. Thanks for keeping it awesome out there.
You likewise.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hey, so I'm over here and I'm serving you a giant air hug because you just finished another episode of the Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast. Thank you for being with me. Our music is provided by The Lucky Five. Learn more about them at thelucky5.com. Our show is produced and edited by Vandal Hyacinth. If you want to dive in deep, head over to Rags to Riches Textile Upcycling Podcast.com.